It was just a fragment, a few ideas jotted down on paper and forgotten in an old trunk. That fragment, those ideas put together by two masters of the past, Federico Fellini and Tullio Pinelli, have become Napoli, New York, the new film directed by Gabriele Salvatores. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and thanks for visiting our podcast, Bits and Bites on Italian Cinema and Other Stuff. Gabriele Salvatores, known primarily for his fabulous 1991 film Mediterraneo, returned to the screen after his 2023 film Casanova returns, with a film which follows his usual poetics, which seem to focus always on the themes of travel, escape, anarchy, search for freedom. In having discovered this gem of a transcript, considered a treatment, which is a sort of, an in-depth summary of an idea for a film, including the story, concept, characters, and other important creative details, he bravely sought to finish what Federico Fellini and Tullio Pinelli had hoped to do, which for some unknown reason was put aside. I guess he saw in this blurb, for lack of a better word, something that could translate into something wonderful. And that, my friends, is what visionaries do. It had everything that appealed to him: a voyage, escape, search for freedom, and some anarchy to boot. What's more, the little blurb presented a story that dealt with three distinct scenarios, harmonious together, but each distinct and separate. Almost like a three-act play, with different settings and characters. In the first part, in fact, Carmine and Celestina, the two orphaned children protagonists, who, by the way, are simply fabulous, move through a dark and nocturnal setting that reflects not only the time of day, but also the condition in a post-war Naples, where buildings have crumbled under enemy bombs and where in the streets are heard cries of pain and anguish and are teeming with children, hungry and frightened. It's shot in black and white, which really works, and I can't help thinking of the Neorealism films I spoke about in our previous talk, films by De Sica like Bicycle Thieves or Roma Città Aperta. Salvatores creates in a crude realism the same as that of the old masters. We see how the morals of right and wrong are buried under the rubble, along with the few possessions the children had. But Salvatore still takes pains to show us, unlike the neorealism films, how even in this world you can still smile, even when the meal depends on how a game of mazzetti, a card game, how it ends. I want to bring you back again for a moment to the session where I spoke about the neorealism genre of films that highlighted the war and post-war years in Italian cinema. Here we have a contemporary filmmaker, Salvatores, who borrows an existing treatment from the 40s and then proceeds to make a film honoring a genre, not his, not of his period, of the past. He does so by using the same characteristics of said genre. Just as a reminder, neorealism saw films being made that reflected a desperate reality. It made use of non-professional actors in real locations, not movie sets. In Salvatore's film Napoli, New York, he skillfully captures the hunger, the desperation, the art of making do of the two children, Celestina and Carmine. There is truth in their gestures and the purity of their gazes, and we find the same spirit with which non-professional actors were directed in the cinema of the 1940s. We find ourselves watching what could easily be a film out of the neo-realism period. I think I love this most about this film. In the first half of the film, Napoli, New York, Fellini's touch is more than evident. After all, He came from that neorealism. Think of his La Strada. In the second of the three parts, the protagonists, having stowed away on a liner bound for the United States, yes, we still see glimpses of Fellini. But now we also notice the development of themes very dear to Salvatore's. That is, primarily the theme of il viaggio, the voyage, the escape. Nevertheless, hovering over Salvatore's work, we still see, I don't know, can I say Fellinesque images? And recall without bidding his films. For example, when the kids arrive in New York, the blaring of the ship's horn recalls the same booming roar we hear in E la nave va and the ship sails on from 1983. The ship itself, especially the upper deck where the rich stroll and relax, it reminds us of the victory, the ship that all of Rimini waits to greet in the film Amarcord, 1973. And yet, Salvatore still injects his own mark on the story, especially on this second part. He shows us two opposing scenarios with marked contrasts: the sunny afternoon and the clean first-class passengers living the good life on deck, with the dark below deck crammed with migrants and illegal immigrants. This, my friends, is Salvatore's. When Carmine and Celestina dock in front of the Statue of Liberty, they see the procession of immigrants marching under the pitying but indifferent gazes of the first-class American passengers. This sequence makes us angry. It pulls all the right strings to create indignation and shame. It was all true. This, too, is Salvatore's. The inhumane travel and reception conditions to which Italian immigrants were subjected is in fact well documented in film history. For example, the very famous 1971 film Sacco e Vanzetti, which narrates the real judicial events of the two Italian immigrants accused and executed by the American penal system only because of their political ideas. Napoli, New York dedicates ample space to the standard of living that Italians were forced to endure in America. Salvatore's, however, also shows us that New York, for the kids, is not just a distant city. It is a possibility of rebirth. And hence, this film becomes a sort of a fable. The third part of the film, or the third act, if we may call it that, takes place in a New York that has been constructed by special effects. The film was primarily shot, believe it or not, Trieste, Italy, with the city serving as the setting for New York. The director used a combination of practical sets and special effects to make Trieste look like New York. This mythical city, Salvatore has said, seen countless of times in many films, has been reinvented in a credible but unrealistic way. It is as it appears to the eyes of the two kids, you see, and it presents a definite contrast with the description of Naples in the first part of the film, which was more realistic and true. We see the prejudice and denigration against the immigrants, the Italians, all in this last part of the film. But while the prejudice is clear and not just intimated, through the children's eyes, we are allowed to see the hope and possibility of rebirth. Salvatore's use of music is used to emphasize this fact. The reinvention of New York, for which real scenes and architecture were replaced with computer interventions, becomes a subjective vision and not objective and realistic. Again, this reinforces the notion of the fable. And fables end with a happy ever after. In a moment like the one we are living in, pervaded by selfishness, indifference, distrust, anger, and even hatred, it seemed beautiful to me to make a film that spoke of solidarity, acceptance, dreams, and hopes, and ultimately of love, says the director, and then continues. And the fact that a fragment of cinematographic art created by two masters of the past, is collected today by us, heirs of that cinema, and brought back to life. Well, I find it beautiful and, if I may say, even moving. You should try to go and see it. You will be glad you did, and you will leave with a skip in your step and a smile on your face. See you next time. Ciao.